Given the increasing persistence at which Nicola Sturgeon and the SNP are pushing for a referendum on Scottish independence in the near future, what argument can you give that presents the strongest case for the Union?
Well, let's start with the response to the coronavirus. The £8.6 billion of UK taxpayers' money, the nearly 800,000 jobs in Scotland that have been supported because of the strength of the United Kingdom. Let's start with that. Let's then go on to the vaccine rollout. The supply of vaccines to Scotland is very significantly higher than the supply of vaccines to the Republic of Ireland. Why is that? Because one is a member of the United Kingdom and the other isn't. Then look at our shared history, that we are one country, one people, that we are all interrelated. We have done great things as a nation together, and Scotland has been an instrumental part of that. I think that the United Kingdom as an entity is a world player in the way that Scotland on its own, or even England on its own, simply wouldn't be. I think the opportunities for people living in Scotland, employment, business opportunities, are much greater than they would otherwise be. That it is a really powerful union that has worked to the interest of both sides, not really just since 1707, but since James I was translated from being James VI, if you see what I mean. And that has worked, and it's hugely beneficial, and perhaps it's most beneficial in time of crisis. I also add that leaving the EU is fundamental, because actually, as long as we were in the EU, and increasingly important decisions were taken in Brussels rather than in London, it was very frustrating for Scottish ministers to have to come to Westminster to say, will you ask at the Fisheries Council for us to have a few more fish? Happy fish, I expect they wanted, but to get more fish, they needed to lobby London to lobby Brussels. And they thought, well, why on earth don't we go directly? Mm-hmm. Now that's gone. Now it's under our control. And trade, likewise. Trade will be determined by the UK as a whole, and Scotland's influence will increase accordingly. So I think Brexit is very good for the Union.
But very interesting this, but let me, until you mentioned James I, the terminology you were speaking in was not enormously different, although it was applied to a different union, to the terminology used by Remainers. You know, this bloc and the common market, we've all been stronger together. There's, you know, great mutual benefit in all being part of the same club. And my real question there is, at the moment, the government is steadfastly against there being a second referendum. What would you say to people in Scotland? Let's imagine a hypothetical voter who was a passionate EU Remainer. And last time round, the only way that they could have been sure of keeping Scotland in the European Union would have been to have voted to keep Scotland in the United Kingdom. If you like, that's been flipped now. There's no guarantee at all that an independent Scotland would be admitted into the EU. But if your overarching constitutional objective as a Scot was to be a member of the European Union, you now face an incredibly, a totally different constitutional picture. Isn't that exactly the sort of thing that should trigger a second referendum? The constitutional backdrop has changed markedly since 2014. And then you and Boris Johnson and unionists can go and put that argument to the Scottish people, and Nicola Sturgeon can put her argument. But the circumstances have changed such that a rerun surely is now justified, is it not?
I don't think that's right. Bear in mind that David Cameron had already made his promise of a referendum. And so it was already on the cards that there would be a referendum on our membership. The Scottish people knew that, and they knew that if we voted to leave, that is what would happen. And if you are this mythical Scotsman who wishes more than anything else, more than an independent Scotland, to rejoin the EU, you can't be certain that an independent Scotland would be allowed to. So you can't get what you want necessarily, even by a second referendum. So you're asking for something that doesn't answer your problem. And a very good number of SNP voters have the logic behind them to realize that leaving one union to join a less democratic, more authoritarian, more dirigiste one doesn't make any sense at all. There's a fantastic cartoon in the Telegraph today, which everybody should see, on Nicola Sturgeon's version of freedom. And it's like Napoleon's version of democracy.